My name is Flynn. I've been coaching for about 6... Oh no, I forgot age again. Oh my god. Yeah, I'm 25. I've been coaching for about 6 years, around London, internationally a little bit. Yeah. There's definitely some kind of moments within the coaching experience that I particularly enjoy that are probably pretty standard for everyone. But I've always been quite I don't know if I would say drawn to coaching, but as soon as I started training, I remember bringing my friends in and being like, oh, try this. So I don't know if that's some controlling impulse that I have, or if it's that I enjoy teaching people to do things. I don't know, but yeah. I definitely see it as a skill, and I take a lot of responsibility for how the classes go. So, for example, I'm always giving myself feedback. I mostly work by myself, so I don't get that much feedback from other coaches, for example. But I'll always see the way that a session goes, and if the session hasn't gone so well, I'll straight away be thinking okay, well, where was my energy at? Where was my body language at? How much fun were they having? The way that I coach is quite influenced by my other profession, which is working with dogs and training dogs. So with those guys, it's all about creating, or the first step really is creating a desire for them to work with you, for you, whatever. If they don't want to, then what are you going to do? Reason, convince? No, you have to make it enjoyable for them, in order for them to do something, learn something. So basically, when I'm coaching, I think a lot about the value that I have as the coach, and how that influences how much the kids are going to respond to what I say. Definitely, when I hear coaching, I think about coaching kids. Maybe that's not right, but something I was saying earlier is that for me, coaching adults is it's almost more facilitating the right the ideal situations that you can learn in. The reality of parkour is that definitely there's a lot of cases where people have had mentors, and that's worked really well for them, and you see that in people like Robbie Griffith, he's a monster, and he had a mentor, and lots of, even Phil Doyle, there's a lot of examples out there that someone had someone kind of guiding them in the right direction. But yeah, at least with adults, definitely some stuff I'm coaching a lot. When I'm teaching laches, for example, I'll do a lot of focusing on very, very, very specific stuff, and I really thrive with that as well. I really like that analytic aspect. But when it's a more general parkour class, a lot of the time it's sort of facilitating the ideal situation to learn in, which is that kind of ideal kind of challenge to failure rate. So you're trying something and you're oh, I'm close to this, I need to keep on trying, you're a few tries away. I'm not explaining it very well, but that's sort of in the zone of optimal progression, whatever that is, that kind of
trying to move people into that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that kind of state of mind. Yeah. With kids, it would be getting them to do whatever I say, or it can be just boring stuff like organization, because kids are so it takes a while to move them around sometimes, but that's a lot of the stuff that I really focus on with coaching kids. Is yes, there's the parkour aspect, but there's also the crowd management, cat holding aspect that takes a lot of specific attention. I actually do some pretty weird stuff. I do when I say that I take influence from dog training, I mean that in a sort of more general way, but I also mean it in the sense that I literally practice recalls with kids. So recall is obviously with a dog, it's you call your dog back. So I almost always I'll start a class with a game they have to go and touch something. So I say oh, you have 5 seconds to go and find something red. So they have to go around and do something like that. And that just gets them used to doing the things that you tell them to do. So I specifically, when I'm writing a class plan, I'll think recall, this is how we're going to train recall, because it's such a useful thing. If you're okay, let everyone come here really quickly, and then they're yeah, it just really breaks the kind of the flow of the class. So yeah. there's a lot of stuff that I really like, but for my so I guess I should talk a little bit more about the like adult side of the adult side of stuff that I'm also doing. So for me, coaching adults, it's all about progression, and it's all about enjoying that progression, and that's not just the physical progression. For me, that's like the mental side. For me, has always been the bigger part. Yeah. So for coaching adults, like I have a very strong technical focus, because I think it's. I mean, it's like what do you mean by technique when you say what do you mean by technique when you hear technique?
When I hear technique, the way something's done.
Ah.
A good technique would be the best way something's done.
Right.
Or the most
So
effective
that's the way. So the way implies that there's a goal as well at the other side.
Okay.
Right. So the most efficient way to do something. So that means like maximum output for minimum input. So that's the definition of efficiency. So that's that sort of like straight line A to B. So with technique, you're getting as close to that line as possible. So maximum output, minimum input. So that obviously applies to like injury management, or rather prevention of injury. Pretty chill. Like right now, so I left. I was been coaching with Parkour Generations for like 5-6 years, and then recently parted ways with them. So I'm teaching a few adult classes. I'm teaching 2 like lache specific classes, swing specific classes, which is cool. I've got a few calisthenics parks in London, so working there mostly, which I really enjoy.
Do you coach twice a week, 3 times a week?
Right now, I went from coaching about 12 hours a week, and now I'm coaching about 6 hours a week, and then doing about 10 hours of dog work, and then other stuff. The thing that comes to mind when I hear that, and it still makes my heart like shrink, was I was coaching at I don't know if this is what you mean, but I was coaching at a festival, and it's like super random setup. We had some like completely random stuff, like boxes for them to jump on, and it worked pretty well. And so set up this little stride mission, and like all good, like slightly wet grass. It was all fine. I didn't think the grass was even wet. Like it all seemed safe. Like I gave it an assessment, and it all seemed safe. But this one girl came by, and she like missed the first step. I don't think she slipped it. I'm pretty sure that she just missed the foot. And then as she tried to go across to the next box, completely missed it, like face on the box. And I was like, fuck, her life is ruined. I'm so sorry, I swore. You can beep that out. Can I swear?
Yeah, you can.
Yes,
swear.
I love swearing. But I thought she just like ruined her life. I was super, I thought she'd like taken her nose off on a box, like that kind of thing. So it turned out she was actually totally fine. Like she just sort of bloodied her nose and it was okay. But I think parkour is extremely dangerous, potentially. And not inherently, or maybe it is inherently, but not necessarily. Maybe that's the right order.
Like that.
Not
inherently.
No. I would say maybe it is inherently dangerous,
Sorry, yeah.
but not necessarily dangerous.
Yes, I like that.
Okay. Yeah, like you're interacting with these like very hard objects, and if you don't have the experience and the technique and the like that kind of gray area between making something and not making it, if you're only like black and white, if you're like I'm either gonna bail horrendously, or I'm gonna be completely fine. Stop what you're doing, I would say. Unless it's like a roof guard or something, I don't know. But like there needs to be, most of the time anyway, unless you're very high level, there needs to be some sort of like safety net, and you can create that safety net. But anyway, yeah, so I was a medic, and we just sorted it out. Like it wasn't in like some crummy state or anything. I'm very like not always, because people mess up in surprising ways that you just can't consider, but almost always, a lot of the time, let's say, if someone bails really badly in your class, it's probably your fault, I would say.
You need to take responsibility.
You need to take responsibility for it. It's likely that you could have predicted, in that situation, I probably could have predicted. I think I tried to escape the responsibility just then when I was talking about it, because I was like, no, she didn't slip, like it wasn't, I looked at it, but realistically I probably could have maybe something just like making the boxes closer, like doing more of a safety briefing, organizing it more. But yeah, I think a lot of the time when someone gets messed up in your class, and you could have seen that happening before, it's not to take responsibility and to go like, or not, it's not to like take like blame on yourself and go like, oh, I'm such a shit coach. No, it's not about that. It's about what you can do better next time. I mean, we're all teaching very different things. like very different things. People's priorities are very different, and I like the situation that I'm in, which is that parkour is not my main thing at the moment. So I can take some creative risks. It doesn't matter too much if I only get a few students. There's a tricky thing. I could be wrong about this, but I've seen it, and I wonder if it is true. I can definitely see some good reasons for it to be true. Is that the way that I think is most sort of productive to train, and I mean that in a psychological sense, and I mean that in a like technical progressive sense as well, is not necessarily the best way to pull people in.
Okay.
And I could be wrong about this, but I think the way that a lot of people run their classes, actually I don't know a lot of people, but definitely some people run their classes, and it makes sense, but it's designed to create a community, which is great. I'm not necessarily saying this is a criticism, actually, because this can give people a lot of meaning, and like that's the main thing. We can get into that. But I think some people are basically they're not coaching with the progression of their students in mind.
Okay.
They're maybe coaching with their sort of career sustainability in mind, which is fair enough for two reasons. One is like you need to like eat food and like do stuff like that, have a shelter, and the other thing is like, again, like for me, that the highest good is just like having a meaning, having like a reason to wake up in the morning, something like that. Like a lot of people don't have that. A lot of people are just grinding through. There was some statistic, I really can't remember the numbers, but the three options were like, do you enjoy your job? Do you like look forward to going to your job? Do you kind of dread your job? Like, are you not really looking forward to it? And then the third or fourth one was like, are you a walking zombie in your day-to-day job? Like, are you just essentially not there? And that was a very high number. It was like 50%, roughly. Again, I can't remember. But yeah, I think people have often not that much to look forward to. And if you can create an environment where people are working together, they're like pushing themselves, they're in this sort of like primal, like they're moving, they're in a community, facing challenge together. I mean, that's a huge need. So then that's a good thing. But yeah, I really don't know whether the priority is to create athletes. I don't really feel like that's my priority. Is the priority to make people like the best that they can be? Maybe that's a little bit more, that sounds more like what I want to do. I mean, with parkour, there's always got to be probably anything. Well, not anything. Definitely with parkour, there's got to be a obviously high sort of adaptive element. Like the last class I did was like, cool, we've got all these plans, like do all this stuff and this stuff and this stuff. So like really, really clear progression with like cat passes, and I was like happy with this. Like, so I focus a lot on atomizing is the term. So that's like basically just what is the smallest chunk that you can break something into, and then teaching that chunk. So I do that a lot with swings when I'm teaching laches, because there's so much to get wrong. Yeah. I'll like, what is the easiest way to get it right? So it's like, don't set the bar high, set the bar extremely low, but then get to the bar, and then set the bar a little bit higher.
You mean the bar physically or the bar?
Because lashes,
yeah,
nice.
Yeah.
Not physically. So that kind of atomizing process of like breaking things into very, very small chunks, teaching them correctly. I feel like that's a taboo word for some coaches, correctly. And maybe there's only better and worse. But we're all humans. Like, there's a lot of overlap. There's going to be more overlap than there is difference. In like a landing technique or something, like you don't want to land with your heels up and your knees forward. Although Ricardo Farias from Brazil has very knee forward, high heel landings, and he's a monster. And I've seen him like striding high up on rails with like the thinnest, shittiest shoes in the world. So there's some individual difference there. But for kids classes, I plan a lot, because there's nothing worse in the world than having like 20 kids and being like, I don't know what's about to come out of my mouth. and I've had that feeling a lot. Yeah. Where you're just like, I'm about to say something and I don't know what it is. You know, and if you get too reflective in that, it's just not a good place to be. Yeah. So again, it's very different for kids. Like I said, like the kids coaching, it's all about creating value and then manipulating my value to make them do stuff that's going to benefit them, whether that's just like really simple stuff like being able to hinge with a straight back. That's another question, is like what's more valuable, they can do like a sick like vault, or they can like sit in a squat or like have more open hips, because that's probably going to benefit them. But anyway, yeah, for coaching adults, I'll pick a focus, whether that's like a mental aspect, it's usually a physical aspect, like a cat boss technique or something like that. And then the rough structure is something like introduce technique, refine technique, apply technique.
Okay.
So the application could maybe, I'll very rarely do like, we have this number of things to do. Because I mean, like, what's the point of doing that kind of thing is so that you get a high amount of volume in, which is obviously good. I've recently bought some like hand clickers, and I'm planning to do more of that stuff because it can be hard to get, and that's something I think is missing in my coaching, is just volume. And when I'm training, I train quite high volume normally, jumping around a lot. I'm very, very cautious with, so there's a whole sort of like dark side of coaching that no one really talks about as well. Something that I'm extremely wary of, because I'm very, very prone to doing, is kind of coaching through authority rather than coaching through maybe facilitating a learning situation or kind of guiding, mentoring. I found this cool video from a nursery. It was just super cute. It's these kids, these kids with like, it's so sweet actually, with a basket, and they've got the they've got the basket, and they've like put it in a puddle, and they're like, it looks like there's water in the basket, and then they lift it up, and then all the water falls out because it's a basket, metal basket, like supermarket, and the post said, we're letting them figure this out for themselves, because something like if we told them that opportunity is forever, the process of finding the thing out for themselves will be lost. It's a really tricky one, because if I can save someone like 2 years of just like flopping around with like a single sentence, it's almost my obligation to do that. But there are certain questions that I will not answer in a class. If there's a big part of a movement, like we're working on precisions, then I'll go into a lot of detail, a lot of drills about how to like set the body in the right way, like focusing on like shoulders, whatever. Something that's very like finicky, like you wouldn't necessarily figure it out. Happy to go into that stuff. But when someone is like, maybe asks me like, how should I like take off this little ledge here? It's like, no, figure that out. Like that's something that you can learn quickly through, maybe that's the distinction, is that something that can be learned through trial and error within like 10 tries, then it's like, that's you. But if it's something that can be learned through trial and error in like 10,000 tries, then it's like, I'm happy to, you know, like put like, yeah, a massive shortcut on that, save you like 9,000 tries. I mean, it must be loads, because it's like, we don't, like, the difference between something like, so I'm also very influenced by the way that they, I think I am anyway, the like circus coaching kind of style. So they focus a lot on like, less on strength and more on like these like basic movement patterns and the way that they sort of interact with each other. Whereas the impression that I get from a lot of parkour coaching, it's just like, be able to squat loads of weight. And that's actually a very, very limited way to approach these things. And in a sense, like, I don't know, is it gonna have that much carryover? Like, I think there's a few little taboos in parkour that are quite amusing to think about. Like, the people who are, this is a weird one, and it's also maybe the point doesn't count because parkour is so young, but it seems a lot like many of the people who are world class, like very, very, very much up there, are not actually doing that much weightlifting. Like some people are not doing that much like maintenance work at all. Like they're just training a lot of parkour, and in a very like high quality way. And that's not necessarily something that everyone can do, because if you're like a little like person with a lot of weight and like, yeah, I don't know, it's not gonna work. But yeah, like I've definitely seen kids that I used to teach who then like ran off to do more like circus stuff. A kid who was like the most ungainly kid I've ever seen in my life. I saw him do a thief vault once, and like the vault was fine, but then he just somehow landed and like landed on his feet, but like just somehow immediately fell onto his face. Like a special kind of lanky that is just very, very difficult to do anything with. So then I didn't see him for like 6 months or something, because obviously I'd just been, you know, coaching terribly or something. But the next time I saw him, he'd been training at the circus school in London, and he did a running front flip on flat, and I was like, I couldn't teach you that, you know, like I do not have the required skills or like the like atomized knowledge to pass on that skill. I couldn't do it. I mean, not in 6 months at least. A lot of coaches don't have the requisite skills to teach what they're teaching. And I completely put myself in that category. And I think it's completely fine to figure stuff out. Maybe the difficulty, the problem there is not that admission, because like, yeah, I don't know, like maybe that's just a situation and you have to roll with that. But it's maybe that a mix of that authoritative approach where you're like, this is correct because I'm saying it, and actually not being that proficient in the thing that you're talking about. Again, it's like a bit of a taboo to like measuring skill in parkour in a sense. And it's highly relative. Like some people just pick stuff up. Like I'm so unintuitive, I can't explain how long it's taking me to learn anything. If I have any skill level now, it's because I've been training for a really long time. You know, now people are training for like 2 years and they're able to do like just crazy stuff. And it's like, how the heck did you learn that in that time? Obvious point, but if you're good at parkour, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're good at teaching parkour, because you might be like 16. And then there's I'm just totally rambling now, but then there's like other aspects of coaching that you no amount of parkour is going to prepare you for. If a 50-year-old woman starts crying in front of you, and all you've ever done before is cat passes, how are you going to deal with that situation? Pretty awkwardly, I bet. So that's maybe another problem that I see with some coaches, is that coaching has to be a very, very holistic thing. And if you haven't lived, I don't know if you're in a position to lead other people in the direction that they want to go in. To make that more concise, like what makes a bad coach is, I mean, obviously the first question there is how do you define a bad coach before what makes one? So probably it would be for me like not actually that much to do with the movement, because you could be like a sick movement coach, but you could be a massive twat and just like lead people down some like dark path. Like that's always possible. We're in such a weird time. It's just so weird. Like there's just so much, like we have like 300 million years of evolution that is just not designed to deal with all of the shit that's going on right now. Like novelty is just good, like too much novelty and not enough time to adapt to it. Like, yeah, just like the ways that our minds are working now, it's so messed up. So for me, there's a few things that I think are like probably really, really important to pass on to people, and that's things like trying to get people to care more about how they see themselves than how other people see them. So that kind of self-reputation thing, like convincing people that effort is more important than talent. And obviously that's not always true, because if you're some like 10-year-old autistic math genius, you're probably never going to catch up with, if you're not that kid, you're probably never going to get as good as that kid. But yeah, I don't know, like valuing effort. I mean, generally, like you see kids and they're like, I don't even want to sweat. It's not cool to sweat. It's meant to be hard. Like that's a good thing. Like struggle, suffer. If you listen to, do you guys know David Goggins?
Yes.
He's the man. Yeah, he's a monster. So he's like this. I mean, I won't go into it. Like if you're interested, David Goggins, what a story. I don't think I've complained a single time since I've heard his stuff. I'm just like, oh, I have no right to complain about anything. He's had this crazy transformation, and his thing is just like essentially just suffer, like do difficult things and deal with the discomfort. Yeah, I guess like discomfort is in itself kind of a taboo, almost. Like you don't really, it's definitely not encouraged. So I mean it's just a classic, because like if you're not leading by example, and that's why it's also important for us to put our egos aside and like let our students see us struggling with things. Conscientiousness. I'm not exactly sure how it's defined, but it's something probably like willingness to put effort into things, maybe. I'm pretty sure that's the most important, one of at least the most important kind of personality qualities in parkour or in any kind of physical discipline. It's just like being able to grind and like enjoying the grind. So yeah, so basically, like if you're coaching people and you're saying like, oh, do all this stuff, do all that stuff, like, oh, your students like, oh, this is really hard, and you're like, no, it's okay, like you can do it, and then they see you rock up to a challenge, try it once, like not make it, and then just back out. That can really send the wrong signals, and obviously not necessarily, because if you're like, well, this is like well beyond me, it's also a completely admirable thing to walk away from a challenge. Like that's for me, like totally respect people who are like, you know what, don't do this anymore. And maybe that's like, I'm not enjoying this anymore. Like earlier I hit my foot, and I'm always thinking like, again, it's that responsibility thing. It's like, what signs could I have seen? Are there any signs that I could have read in my behavior that made me think I probably should stop doing this because I might get hurt in some way? And there was probably some. And I mean, like I was completely doing it for the camera by the end. It was like, oh, like this angle's really nice, rather than like I'm enjoying this and I want to do it. So I wasn't really zoned into how I was feeling. So that's probably a like red flag for like maybe stop doing the thing if you're not really thinking about. Yeah. Is parkour for everyone? That's a really good question. Definitely, like if you'd asked me that like 5 years ago, straight away I'd have been like, yeah. And I'm still like, I'm pretty sure I believe that it is. And like for me, the really beautiful thing, really beautiful thing about parkour, and something that in the modern age as well is possible, is that you can take value from progression rather than take value from competence or competency. So in the past, it's like it would have been very binary. It would have been like, well, this person is like a competent blacksmith, or they are an incompetent blacksmith, or they're just not even a blacksmith. But you would never have gone like, this person is working really hard at becoming a blacksmith. Like I mean, maybe, but I don't think it's like a personality thing. Like, I mean, there's a whole like shift in a very different individual direction.
For how hard someone worked.
Yeah, and also just like how you can appreciate how hard you've worked as well, and like that whole kind of thing. It's like this is all very new. So, yeah, to answer that question, I think like mentally, it would probably benefit everyone. Physically, I mean, some people should do a ton of preparatory work, like a ton of preparatory work before they even do a precision. And that's the reality, is that people aren't going to do that. And then obviously there's people with like massive disabilities, and it's like, oh, I mean, there's only so much you can do.
My opinion is that.
Definitely that distinction, that there's like, whether it's going to benefit everyone or whether it has the potential to benefit everyone, definitely has the potential. But there are maybe like more concise ways to go about that. So like, if it's going to benefit you in a physical sense, then it's like, that should be more like movement stuff should be more integrated in like PE or whatever. And if it's going to benefit you in like a mentality sense, just grinding away at like Pokemon or something could be like, I don't know. I was reflecting about that the other day, because I thought that I wasn't very conscientious, like naturally. But then I remembered how much I was grinding away at Pokemon when I was a kid. And I was like, I'm going to get this like new Pokemon to level 100 like today or tomorrow or something like that. And then I was just like smashing the Elite Four, like repeat.
It's very interesting that you don't see yourself as conscientious.
It's what I was saying earlier about the cycling thing. It's like I didn't learn to ride a bike until like 2 years ago.
Really?
Because I was like my dad was doing like the classic thing when I was like, I don't know, under 10, whatever. So he was like holding the bike, and like I was cycling, and then he would like let go of the bike, and he was like, no, I've still got it, like it's all good. And then I just like freaked out, and I was like, no, I'm sick, like I feel sick and I need to let go. And then I just never learned, because I had this like rejection response.
People have that most commonly with swimming.
Right.
People avoid swimming.
Yeah.
Because of a past experience where they didn't like it.
Yeah.
It just sticks with them.
Right.
Almost grows and like snowballs inside of them.
Yeah.
As they grow.
I guess it's about motivation as much as conscientiousness, because it's like the Pokemon, I was like super motivated to get good at, because it was super fun. You know, it wasn't even fun probably. It's just like weird addiction. But like cycling when I was starting, or when I tried when I was a kid, I was extremely unmotivated to do it. And maybe that's another lesson that you can impart to kids. It's like, even if you're not motivated to do the thing, you can still benefit from doing it. So maybe you should do it. That's what school is, right? Definitely. I mean, like the one I mentioned for kids, it's like you just say a color or a word or something, and you have to just like find the thing in the room, and that works really well. Like hiding stuff, like I think we have some like hunter or some gatherer like instinct that taps into. So kids are super hyped. Even kids who are kind of like a bit cool, where you're like, go and find this thing in like 10 seconds. They're like, I'm gonna find the thing. Like they're super hyped. Adults, things to. I've not really played with this too much actually, so this isn't maybe the right answer, but like effort as a quality is like something that can be trained, is totally a thing. So I know Danny at I think the FAMJAM a few years ago. I haven't played this one, but like the game was something like there's a bottle, one person is protecting the bottle, the other person is trying to get the bottle.
I played that one.
Right. Yeah.
Stole that one.
Nice. Yeah. So like that takes a lot of effort, and by effort it's not just like physically, I don't know, it's just like this quality of just trying as hard as you can to do something. That's something that probably has some pretty good crossover. So pleasure.
Appreciate that a lot. And if you're up north, obviously.
Like instead of planning to travel a bit more.
Yeah. All the best of you coaching, obviously. Sweet, man.
Do a proper podcast next time instead of.
Yeah. See you in a bit, man.